Owen,
Here.
Rebecca J.,
Here.
Tori Middlestat,
Here.
Alex Pedescovas,
Here.
Kate Schwarzler.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been practicing.
I appreciate it.
All right, everyone have a chance to review the minutes from the January 4th, 2021 meeting? Any changes to be made?
Well, Alex was the one that changed my vote from aye to nay, and it says in the minutes that it was me. So actually, it should note that Alex is the one who asked for the correction.
Okay. Any other changes? If not, how about a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes with changes.
Second.
And there was a second?
Yes. Second from Sally.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Minutes are approved from the January 4th, 2021 meeting. All right, we'll move on to visitor and public comments. Anyone out there, Karen? Okay. Then we'll move on to staff reports and presentations. And Fred, I bet you have an update on transportation projects.
Yep, not a huge one, just to let you know that we are expecting the trolley project report to come out real soon. There is going to be a final meeting on that on the 10th, I believe. So a couple of Wednesdays from now, and then we're going to start sort of telling folks what sort of the findings are and sort of do some outreach associated with that. So that's the trolley project. Other is the transportation system plan. We did receive a set of preferred alternatives for it, and we gave them back comments, but they are going to start having some more of the committee meetings toward the end of the month. And then as part of that, we're going to do a big public outreach push. So I guess keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll probably have one of the virtual sort of YouTube open house things like we had, I don't know, a few months ago. And we'll also probably have something more interactive that people can engage with. So just beware that those things are coming down the pike. I'll probably mention something about it at the next meeting too, and we can talk about it more at that point. So that's pretty much it for that. Any questions about that?
No. Okay, how about the upcoming public hearings?
All right, so you'll remember that we have a couple of code updates at our next Planning Commission meeting. One of those is on the agenda for tonight. The other one is just that small little change to the site design review. We are planning on having those at the next meeting. The following meeting, which is in April, there will be likely a public hearing on a land use proposal. Please remember that you folks will be acting as judges in that decision, so do not have any ex parte contacts or off the record contacts, please, or else you'll have to disclose them. You are supposed to act as a judge. You're supposed to not have bias and things in that land use decision. So just beware that that proposal will be on the April agenda, or at least that's what we're planning on. That proposal is for, there's a big chunk of land, 70 acres got annexed into the city just off of 16th last year, or maybe a year and a half ago or something like that. So that the proposal is for the first phase of that chunk. So so if anybody wants to talk to you about it, or if anybody's posting you on Facebook or anything, please do not engage in those conversations.
right. Okay, we'll move along to unfinished business. The sign code discussion continued from January 4th. And we have an updated staff report, Fred?
Yep, and it's just super simple. You guys encouraged me to make sure that I was defining public service. And so I tried to like directly tie it to the language related to conditional uses in the subchapter 17. I suppose I could show you how that looks in subchapter 17. Boy, I have a ton of tabs open. I should have cleaned up some of this stuff. Would you like to see what that looks like? Let me just figure out how to show it to you here. All right. I'm going to share the wrong screen. I can almost guarantee it. Screen 2. All right. This screen right here. So you can see subchapter 17, when it talks about public, quasi-public, you can see that we have a special conditional use for larger sort of public use activities that are in a residential zone. Alex, can you see that? You want me to zoom in a little bit? It says buildings and structures operated by a governmental agency or by a public utility and necessary for a public service. Basically, I put specifically that the activity needs to have had or be something that would fall under this conditional use process, just to really tie it to something specific. So it wasn't something like this where it was like a power pole or a natural gas line or something like that. So that's why I wrote the language as I did. It, again, is probably not the most elegant code change that you'll ever see, but I actually do think that we are gonna, we're gonna talk probably the next agenda item about goals for 2021, and revisions to the sign code that are more holistic is something that I feel like we need to do for a couple of reasons. So this is kind of a stopgap sort of measure. Yeah, I guess that's it. Any questions? Okay, so this will be on a public hearing in March.
Okay. All right, we can move along to new business and the goals for 2021.
Perfect. So I know that we've kind of talked about goals, but some of the things that, we had a good 2020, I thought. I felt like we got a whole bunch of stuff done. We got a historic preservation code adopted. We got some zone changes done. We reviewed a couple of projects. That's a pretty solid year of getting stuff done. And I think some of the really sort of key things that we needed to get done have gotten done. The code is a whole lot easier to read now. Literally, we took tons of pages out of that thing, which is really helpful. But now it's okay, what do we want to do now? And so I'm going to really put it to you folks. I noted a couple of things in my little staff report that I know we have coming up. I do feel like we need to finish that sign code. You'll remember when we did the historic preservation code, we removed signs completely from their jurisdiction, especially in the downtown area. And we sort of said as we were doing that, well, we'll remove them from their jurisdiction, but then we'll make sure that we put regulations for the downtown area or standards for signs in the downtown area in the sign code. And we haven't taken that next step, and we've sort of pulled back from it because, the pandemic and everything like that. Now, having said all of that, we also realize that there's probably some drawbacks with our larger sign code. You remember originally we talked about, oh boy, it would be great just to focus on downtown, you know, and only do the sign regulations for downtown. Now we sort of have looked at it a little more and we realize, you know what, we've got some issues in our code that are related to free speech. You're not supposed to regulate sign content. You're supposed to regulate like size and whatnot. We have some content regulations in our code, and so we know that we need to go in and we need to take a deeper look at it. There was a Supreme Court case, I don't know, a few years ago that talked about sign content, and because of that, a whole bunch of cities had to update their sign codes. We have not done that to this point. So we realize that we're going to need to do that. That's probably like a big project, but I do feel like it's something that we need to figure out at some point. Also, transportation system plan is going to come before you at a certain point. That will be awesome. Hopefully, it's good and awesome. And then, yeah, a couple of development projects are going to come before you too. But I think that there's room to do other things. So I leave it to you to tell me what you would like some of those things to be.
Fred, this is Sally. I have a question about your note about allowing more flexible use of portions of Independence's industrial zones. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you're thinking about that. But that made me think about, it seems like we could use some more community education about industrial zones. I'm thinking of the things that have come before us in the last couple of years where people seemed really surprised that like they lived right across the street from a heavy industrial zone, and those kinds of issues that perhaps people don't always realize what they are living next to and how things are zoned. Not necessarily just industrial zone, but that seemed like the one that kind of struck my nerve of where we really could do some more community outreach and education about the zoning. So I was curious to know what you were thinking here, and that made me think of my issue.
Yeah, so you remember one of the things that I did a while back was I showed you guys a map of walkability, right? And sort of like the whole idea of like potentially complete neighborhoods, and you know, how does a complete neighborhood look like? You'd probably want to have some sort of recreation. You'd probably want to have some sort of commercial use somewhat nearby. And then you would need residences, right? And you'll remember that certain portions of the community are really well served, right? There's certain things that you're like, boy, I'd almost like, I should have pulled that map up. I'll look for it in just a little bit, but like, but you'll remember that there were some areas that just didn't have a whole lot of recreation, like for instance, around Central Plaza, though this high school is right there, right? So, you know, Central Plaza has some restaurants, it has a whole bunch of residences, but it's kind of deficient in recreation unless you include the high school property and the middle school property. Some areas like north on Gun Club, you'll remember it had residences and then it had a little bit of the park there. But you'll remember that other than like going down Gun Club, you didn't really have really close access to a commercial sort of use that you could go to. And so it seems to me like we could do something like some sort of overlay or something like that that could say, hey, there's certain areas within these industrial zones where some degree of more flexible uses could be allowed. So somebody could, you know, go get a coffee or whatever, or alternatively, you could take some of these industrial zones and you could allow certain things like more live, like, I don't know. I guess this is part of the conversation. I'm gonna say sort of live, work, create sort of opportunities. Right now, we don't really allow residences in our industrial zones. And so both of those are like, you know, both of those might be options. You know, I think of one particular site in particular, oh shoot, now I'm gonna have to get out I'm gonna get out the zoning map so we can look at it. Keep on talking amongst yourselves.
I was gonna just, I really like that sort of exercise of thinking about the complete neighborhoods. And so I wanted to add to that, to our list, as something we, at least that we talk about. And because I think the philosophical discussion is very interesting on laying that stuff out. And I was pretty intrigued when you brought it up the first time.
I'd like to second that. I think livability issues and access to bike paths, walking paths, parks, places for people to play a game of soccer or whatever, that should be part of how we look at expanding in Independence.
Right. So here's the map. So here's the zoning map. So this piece right here, I mean, this is the old, oh, did I not actually share my screen? Did I share it? Oh, I didn't hit share. I'm sorry. Can you guys see that? Can you guys see it? Yes? All right.
Yep.
So one of the things that just sort of, I mean, so we have a whole bunch of southwest area right here, right? This is just a whole bunch of land right here. And all of these people are going to be, I mean, we're working to create paths and trails and whatnot. But I ultimately think, man, wouldn't it be so cool if these paths and trails could ultimately, you could get to a site like this and potentially you could have somebody roasting coffee and living in a, you know, living, or, you know, I don't know, where it could be more of a flexible industrial use that could then serve these sorts of neighborhoods here, right? That could get here easily via walkability and they could get to something like that. So, I mean, that's just sort of like a discussion to have. Definitely, I agree completely with the whole livability and walkability. And I mean, you guys know me, it's like, man, I want our community, I would love our community to like, to be able to get around by bike and ped, to make actual transit work. All of those things are things that I would love to try and figure out. So, I mean, yeah, so.
One other thing, Fred, remember you showed us a map one time and you said there was supposed to be a path in that southwest corridor and it wasn't showing. I guess I'd like to take some time this year to make sure those paths around the city, not just in the southwest quarter, are on the maps for planning and for development, and that they don't get lost as we change and go from year to year, but that they are firmly in the city's plans for what happens in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's good. There are, I mean, there are definitely in like the parks and open space plan, there are trails shown there. So I think like looking at what those trails are, the TSP incorporates, at least the draft right now incorporates, I think, all of those trails and more. So,
but making sure that they come through as development plans come before this group and before the city council, that those plans don't get, oh, well, if we allow this person to do this, we can't put it here, so we'll just put it someplace else some other time, sort of thing. I guess I want to have it firmly nailed down, and that the paths are going to be connected and they're going to allow people to walk or bike or push a stroller or whatever they want to do.
right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. we can definitely do that. I think one of the challenges, I mean, some of this pedestrianism is easier with new development because you can sort of say, hey, look, it's on a map and we've already thought about this. I think especially trying to figure out how to retrofit that some of our developed areas to really accommodate bikes well is sort of a challenge that I see. So I would love to figure out how to do that better, and have those conversations too. Any other thoughts about what you would like to work on over this year?
We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I'm really curious about slowing down traffic. We've talked about that downtown, whether it's, you know, lights, more lights when people want to cross the street, and I know that there's regulations with the roads, but speed bumps. Or I was in Salem the other day, and there was new parking by the riverfront park, and the crosswalk had a speed bump on either side of it. Like, it slowed you down. And I've never seen that. And I think when we see people coming down Monmouth and Main Street, lickety split.
Yeah. Yeah.
One other issue, I don't know if it comes here, but you had said in your agenda to bring up ideas. I'm concerned about a place for another school, especially an elementary school on the south side of Independence and Monmouth. And I'm wondering, can we talk to the district about putting one maybe along Chestnut, so that helps bring that street through? And the city can help with the grounds and make it, the school grounds, also an open area park for people to walk and play in. I don't know where that discussion comes, so I'm bringing it here, and you all can tell me, well, that's not what we do, but.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to at least find out what the district's plans are. I think that's good.
Right, it might be interesting for us to have a joint meeting with the Parks and Rec and coordinate on that, similar to we've done with like the historic preservation, but to have a meeting of the minds on that.
You know, it would be good to bring in too is the Traffic Safety Commission, right? And like really attempt to I mean, put out the idea that we want our community to be super walkable, and really sort of emphasize quality of life and livability and basically everything that we do. Like, I think that would be awesome, because I mean, some part of the reason I geek out so much on transportation is because some of the coolest planning is getting done related to roadways. I mean, if you think about roads, if you think about right away, literally it's every city's most bit of land, right? Every city, the most land that they control is right away. And so if you make the right of way super nice, it really has a big influence on the rest of the community, right? And so trying to figure out how to make right of way nice, going to things like parks or whatever it might be, I think that would be awesome. That would be a good project.
Sherry Stewart from the Main Street program with Oregon State Parks has a ton of resources on walkable communities and main streets that run through downtown and that sort of thing. They have a lot of speakers. I know they've had some people come in and talk to, whether it's the Downtown Association and others, about just parking studies and walkability and the road diet and all that kind of stuff. So she's a great resource to reach out to.
Cool.
And I can get you her contact information if you don't already have it.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Fred, are there other things coming down from the state level that will be impacting our land use decisions? I'm thinking of the housing changes that we've had to implement with allowing more duplexes and such. I just wonder if there were other things that we need to be aware of.
It's a good question. We're probably going to need to change. I would imagine that we're probably going to get bumped over 10,000 people this year, and that kind of kicks in some new requirements for us. So I guess when we get confirmation that we're bumped over it, then we'll probably start working on some of that stuff. We sort of laid the groundwork with duplexes as part of the design standard changes. Now all we have to, and now because we have that matrix, all we have to do is go in and allow P for the duplex, right? It's nice and simple. We can do that real easy. So because duplexes are going to be allowed in every residential zone once we hit 10,000, but we can cross that bridge in the future. I think we have a year after we hit 10,000. Also, when we hit 10,000, it's going to require us to update our housing needs analysis more often. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Fred, do you remember the last time? I mean, it's been a number of years ago that I recall that. I don't remember the exact year, but Mike Dankel was still here, I think, when that happened.
The last housing needs analysis,
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Okay. Like outside of 10 years, maybe?
It might be 10 years. Yeah, something like that.
I was thinking about that the other day. Okay. That's something that would have to be addressed with hitting the 10,000 population and requirements of the state then.
Yep, that's exactly right. And the state itself has new requirements of how to do those things. So, yeah, that will be. Yeah, we'll figure it out when that happens.
State offer like a partnership? Do they have state people come to the city and work with you directly, or is it just you contact them and they tell you if you did it right, kind of thing? Or
I don't know exactly. I imagine that there's probably some degree of grant funding to help out with that. It would just be a matter of tapping into it. But like I say, they have a whole new methodology for how they're allocating housing needs now, which is trying to get to some of the underrepresented needs and some of the previous housing needs analysis. So things like homelessness and whatnot.
okay, just curious.
Any other thoughts about things that we should be doing this year? So one thing that I would love, especially if we can all get out of COVID, is like taking some field trips, right? And that would be a good chance to actually like get a sense of where some of these trails are and just what some of the connections we're anticipating for connections. Because it's really easy to point on the ground and say, that's where we're planning on putting it, right? It's kind of harder to envision on a map. That would be fun.
All right, any other questions or comments for Fred for the 2021 goals? Other than to get out of this pandemic stuff and move ahead. All right. Okay, any other informational items we need to discuss tonight then?
Boy, I don't think so. If you guys think of anything else, let me know. Like shoot it on over. I mean, yeah. I mean, I do think we did a lot of good stuff last year, and I mean, I do sort of envision you guys as sort of a think tank, right? Where we're like actually trying to like push the community in a good way. So like, I mean, sort of think about how do we want to push this community in constructive ways. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Fred, for everything you've been doing and will do. You've really worked hard. A lot of progress. And I want to thank all the other commissioners on the Planning Commission. I have a really good group of folks here. And in all the years I've been doing this, this is my favoriteest time of all those years. From everybody really has really good ideas, and we really work well together. And I think it's really positive steps for the city. So I think 2021 will be a good year. All right. If there are any other informational items we need to discuss, we can I'll take a motion for adjournment then.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Meeting is adjourned. See you next month.
See everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Fred.